There's very few rock and roll bands. There's rock bands, and there's sort of metal bands. There's whatever. But there's no rock and roll bands. There's the Stones and us, Malcolm Young. Say we try that again, because it failed to play on one side.
From high atop the battlements of a rainy and wind-swept Castle Curmudgeon, good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America and all ships at sea. Welcome to the Blast Radius. So good of you to join us tonight. And we open with a special programming advisory. The Worst People in the Whole Wide World weekly update will not be seen in its normal time slot this week, so that we can bring you this special presentation of monologue that's been living inside the host's head for several days and desperately needs to escape. Why does it need to escape? Because we need to talk about AC/DC. Actually, we need to talk about rock music more broadly, but we're going to open with the band that bills itself as AC/DC, which, as some of you may know, is currently playing a 10-date Australian tour, working their way from east to west, filling all of the biggest cricket grounds and football stadiums in the country with rapturous admirers, receiving glowingly positive reviews in the press, and so on. And that's all well and good. I don't begrudge anyone the right to make money, and I don't begrudge anyone the right to pay hundreds or thousands of dollars to spend 2.5 hours trying to relive their youth, or their parents' youth, or their grandparents' youth, as the case may be. The question that I want to grapple with is, to what extent is the band on the stage actually AC/DC? I mean, in the videos I'm watching from these shows, I see a silver-haired 70-year-old Angus Young still cavorting about in his schoolboy knickers, and I see a 78-year-old Brian Johnson still belting out the vocals, and they both sound fine. Let's not be in any doubt about that. In fact, I don't know what kind of special tea he's been drinking, but to my ears, Brian sounds better at 78, much better, in fact, than he did at 48. And as far as Angus goes, the physicality is more subdued than it used to be. I'm relieved to see he's leaving his shirt on now and no longer doing the strip tease routine. The duck walk looks like more of a jaunty little skip now. But to whatever extent he has been affected by the ravages of Father Time, those ravages haven't spread to his fingers to any appreciable degree. I am more concerned with what I see when I look behind the two frontmen. On the drums, I see some guy. On the bass, I see some other guy. And on rhythm guitar, I see a man who is not Malcolm Young. Because Malcolm Young died 9 years ago now, in fact. And I have a problem with the band billing itself as AC/DC, still making records and playing shows almost a decade after the funeral of the guy whose band it was, especially with some guy on bass and some other guy on the drums. And as far as Stevie Young goes, I mean him no disrespect. His uncle Angus asked him to step in for his uncle Malcolm when the latter uncle was struck with the early onset dementia that ultimately claimed his life at age 64. He said he would do it. He's a fine guitar player. He has filled those shoes as capably as anyone else could have done. And 11 years ago, I understood the stated rationale when Angus announced that Malcolm's not going to be able to play anymore, but we had this set of songs written for a new album, so we're going to record it with Stevie and we will release it as a tribute to my brother. But that was 2 albums and 2 tours ago, which impels me to ask, what are we actually doing here, Angus? And it also impels me to ask, where is the dividing line between a band and a brand? One of the sources of AC/DC's credibility as a live act for a long time was that when you went to see one of their shows, the guys on the stage were the Back in Black lineup. Malcolm Young, Angus Young, Phil Rudd, Cliff Williams, Brian Johnson. With the exception of the regrettable drummer changes that happened between 85 and 92, there was a period of 38 years when the albums still playing god-awful dog shit live shows, wringing every last ill-gotten penny that can be wrung out of whatever nostalgic attachment the public still has for the brand name. And if that description makes you think of Black Sabbath during most of the 80s and 90s, it should. And more on them in a moment. But I never wanted AC/DC to be one of those bands. Who's probably the 99th percentile of world population as far as the amount of time and attention and money and travel I've invested in being an AC/DC fan. I think I should have at least earned the right to find this all just a little bit offensive. For the people who are going to these Australia shows and the other shows that they've been playing around the world, I hope they enjoyed themselves. I certainly never didn't enjoy myself at any of the 20 plus AC/DC shows I attended over the years. But later on in life, when those people say, yeah, I saw AC/DC once back in 2025, did they really see AC/DC? Or did they see Angus Young, Brian Johnson, some guy, some other guy, and not Malcolm Young? And if we open the aperture more broadly, rock music in general seems to be in a very strange place in its existence. A stone-dead artistic idiom for which a great deal of demand still exists. Setting aside the question of whether the band currently performing under the AC/DC banner is actually AC/DC, how many other rock acts can you think of who can fill a stadium anywhere in the world by themselves in a non-festival setting? 83-year-old Paul McCartney, the 80-something-year-old Rolling Stones, maybe the Foo Fighters? I'm hard-pressed to think of any others. Here's another pertinent question. Can you think of anyone who is a rock star in the traditional sense who is under age 50? Me either. Better yet, can you name any rock band of any cultural relevance that originated in the current century? Me either. It is an exceedingly strange thing to consider, the fact that the crowds at these stadium shows contain plenty of people in their teens and 20s and 30s, but the acts they most want to see are all in their 60s and 70s and 80s, and the songs they are most eager to hear were released decades before they were born. And it's an even stranger thing to consider in light of the fact that rock music originated as an idiom that was supposed to be by young people for young people, which brings me along to another big stadium show that took place not long ago at Villa Park in Birmingham back in July, when Ozzy Osbourne, a man who had no business being any place but in hospice care, was dragged off his deathbed, propped up in a chair on stage, and mumbled his way through 2 4-song sets that almost certainly hastened the coming of his death 2 weeks later. I know we were supposed to pretend this was a wonderful, awesome, inspiring thing, but was it? Or was it cruel, exploitative, and really quite sad? I know this is an unpopular take. I know we are supposed to view the spectacle through rose-colored glasses and hear it through rose-colored headphones, but I thought it was much closer to the latter thing than the former. In fact, watching it made me really uncomfortable. Was there any good reason why the original members of Black Sabbath needed to reunite and play 4 songs together in their late 70s, except to bring their lead singer uncomfortably close to being the real-life version of the fictional Dewey Cox, who got the old band back together and then promptly dropped dead on stage at the end of his last performance? Spoiler alert, no, there was not. If your actual life ends in a way that is eerily reminiscent of a parody movie, I don't see anything about that is rock and roll. There is never anything dignified about life imitating parody. They designed that event, back to the beginning, I believe it was called, to be some sort of Woodstock of heavy metal. And once again, you had a sellout crowd of primarily people under age 40 rocking out to the geriatric machinations of a bunch of pensioners in leather trousers playing songs that originally came out on vinyl record. How did rock music and heavy metal come to this? Back when they were in their heyday, would any of these performers have wanted to wind up as wig-wearing nostalgia acts? I strongly suspect not. When you take off the rose-colored glasses and the rose-colored headphones, was there anything really that great about seeing Axl Rose with his voice so completely shot he sounds like a syphilitic meerkat making love to a belt sander? Was there anything really that great about seeing Ozzy Osbourne with 1.5 feet in the grave struggling so badly they had to put a 2-hour delay on the feed of the live stream so they could have time to pitch correct the vocals? I know Ozzy wanted very badly to do it. I know the people of Birmingham wanted very badly to bid farewell to him and to Sabbath. I know a lot of money was raised for charity, and that is all well and good. But a collective mutual thirst for a hit of nostalgic dopamine doesn't make a thing a good idea. And it doesn't make it not cruel, exploitative, and sad. Here's another unfashionable take incoming. I also think Sharon Osbourne has to be held to account for making the last 5 years of her husband's life into a rather grotesque exercise in something that is closer to pornography than documentary. There is a film currently streaming on Paramount Plus, I think it is, that's just about the most uncomfortable 2 hours I have ever spent. What sort of a person invites a film crew into her house to painstakingly document the death throes of their spouse? Do you do that to your life partner? I know she is very fond of hiding behind the charge of exploitation by saying the proceeds from the concert went to charity. But you obviously made plenty of money from that documentary, which is just about the most undignified thing that can possibly be imagined. And I also know there's a theatrical concert film coming out next year, and you will make plenty of money from that too. So I think, Mrs. Osbourne, you're perhaps not quite as well insulated from charges of exploitation as you might like to think you are. And it was difficult not to scoff at her claims toward the tail end of that documentary that, oh, I just want to get Ozzy through this last thing, and then we can go quietly spend the rest of our lives together. Because I feel like if you wanted to spend the rest of your lives to amount to longer than the 17 days it wound up being in the actual event, you wouldn't be doing this to this poor man, and you wouldn't be capturing his every frailty in painstaking detail for the consumption of the entire world. In other words, I feel like the actions make the words ring a little bit hollow. If I should ever wind up as diminished and incapacitated as Mr. Osbourne was at the end of his life, I should hope I would be treated better than that by my wife. But everybody got their little delicious hit of nostalgia dopamine, right? And the people of Birmingham got a one-day distraction from the fact that their English city is now so heavily Muslim that less than 90 days after this concert at the same stadium, when Aston Villa played a match against Maccabi Tel Aviv, the British government had to ban Maccabees fans from attending the game because it's just too dangerous to have Jewish soccer fans come into the city. Bread and circuses, ladies and gentlemen, bread and circuses. But back to the larger point. How is it that rock music went from being exclusively by young people to exclusively by old people? I don't think there's any easy, convenient answer to why and how that happened, but if you folks have got any theories, I would be fascinated to hear them. One final note on Ozzy Osbourne. I'm not sure how I never heard about this when it happened, but on the day of his funeral at Buckingham Palace, the band of the Coldstream Guards played Paranoid in his honor, and maybe we should play it here tonight because it actually sounded pretty awesome. But more importantly, I thought it was a rather touching gesture on the part of the king, and I think it would have meant a lot to Ozzy, too. To have begun his life in a one-bedroom flat with an outdoor toilet on the worst street in working-class post-war Birmingham, and to have ended it by being paid tribute by the King of England. I think a man like that can fairly say he has done well for himself. Also, last note on AC/DC, I don't think I have ever told the story on this program of my 120-minute-long interaction with Malcolm and Angus Young, but if anyone is interested in hearing it, please do remind me during the main body of the show. I think that is where the monologue ends, so I will now cease my prattling and convey you into the loving custody of my distinguished colleague, your illustrious co-host, the one and only, your friend and mine, Mr. Caucasian Sasquatch.
So I have an aspect I have to question about this. This is AC/DC, and we might catch a strike from it. But here we go.
No, this is well, we're not playing any AC/DC because I know we will catch a strike from it.
Right. But I'm saying, like, what you want to play, I went and looked at it, and I doubt it.
No,
But
it's Sabbath. It's Sabbath. It's not
oh, it's my
AC/DC.
bad. Shit. Oh my God. Y'all can flay me in the comments later.
Yeah, you deserve to be flayed for that one, my friend.
Absolutely. All right. That was lovely, bud.
I wish there was a version of it. I've looked, but I haven't been able to find it where we could see the percussion section, because that's the most impressive part of it for me, is how just with their
Agreed.
regular marching band instrumentation, they could pull off, matching the sound of a rock drum kit. And I feel like we missed the part. Did we miss the solo or the
Yeah,
cornet
no,
player?
you're a monetized channel. The more of that we play, the more likely you are to lose monetization.
Ah, fuck it. I don't care.
Oh, okay.
I love that. I can't get enough.
Love it. We all still functional everything.
And you know what's great about it is, if you were just watching it with no audio, you would never be able to tell they weren't just playing any of the standard numbers from their normal repertoire. They're just
And
completely stone-faced.
I cannot understand how anyone could play that and not at least tap their foot.
I know, that's exactly why I wish we could see the percussion section, because
All right. Time for me to do my
because
thing.
you've got one guy with a bass drum and one guy with a snare drum and one guy with a tom, and I guess a guy with a couple of cymbals, and somehow they managed to get a rock drum sound out of that, and just chef kiss, dude. That is freaking awesome.
It is great. I'm going to do my intro now. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Blast Radius. Tonight we are going to discuss well, there's an awful lot of stuff on the table. This past week has been quite eventful. There were some supposedly leaked emails. There were some supposedly leaked stories. There's some supposed Epstein file stuff. And then again, we also both watched But Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Is that correct? That is correct. Yes. And I was utterly confused by the movie, but we're going to get into that. And it'll probably be on the second half. Until then, we're going to discuss what he's discussing, what she's discussing, what you've been discussing. And then we're going to cover what I want to talk about because I'm the weirdo here. Thank you. Come again. All right. Now, where were
So does anybody want to hear my AC/DC story?
Yes, please. Do the thing with the thinginess.
This was, I want to say, November of 2000, Devore, California, which is just it's outside Fontana, just shitty little spot in the desert. We're on the Stiff Upper Lip tour, and Lady Curmudgeon and I met up with a guy that we knew from the AC/DC news group. If there's any younger viewers in the audience who don't know what news groups are, ask your parents. And we had hatched a plot in the news group that we wanted to give the band some sort of a gift from us collectively. So we came up with the idea of having some T-shirts printed up for them, and everybody pitched in a little bit of money, and the graphic design inclined members of the group whipped up a logo and some graphics, and it's a pretty cool looking shirt actually. And we printed up 5 of them for each of the band members, and some for ourselves too, obviously. And we met up at the Denny's just outside town. Nobody had smartphones back then, so it was still in the days when you had to say, I'll meet you at the Denny's at such and such time, and I'm going to be wearing this. And what days those were. Anyway, so we meet up with my buddy Nick, and we've got the T-shirts, and we go to the show, and the show is over. We had never really given any thought to how we would get in touch with the band to actually give them the shirts we had for them. But the show ends, and we're in the parking lot outside, and we decide, how about let's just take a walk around the perimeter, the fence line of the venue, and over where the buses are, and we'll see if we get lucky. And we walk and we walk and we walk, and we look over to our left, and all of a sudden, look, there's Angus Young sitting in the bus next to his wife Ellen. And so we walk very excitedly over to the fence, and a couple of idiots. One of the idiots has a knapsack, and we kind of gesture to Angus, trying to convey that we have something here that we want to give you. And he kind of half-heartedly stands up and is like, all right. And he comes on outside and greets us and invites us to hop over the fence. And bear in mind, this is the year before 9/11, so nothing like this could ever possibly happen again. The fence was probably 10 foot high, let's say. It tends to get higher each time I tell the story. It's probably about 35 feet at this point. But anyway, we both drag ourselves over the fence and spend a few minutes hanging out with Angus. I was more of a mind of explaining that we have these gifts we want to give you, and a handshake and a hello, and I don't want to waste any more of your time. So we do that, and I quickly turn to start climbing back over the fence because I want to leave the man alone. Feel a hand on my shoulder. Man, someone pulls me off the fence, and I turn around, and he's lit from the back. All I is hair. Did I? Did I?
Yeah, you're squirreling out, brother.
Okay, I'm back. And they went about. Am I back now?
You're solid froze for a minute. Just.
Am I back now?
No, not yet. I can hear you, but there you go. All right, go for it. You were fixing to go back over the fence and backlit who?
Oh,
I want you to do me a favor,
out
brother.
there with us, and okay.
You've got to tell this story when your gear is working straight. I think your internet's cheesing you out, and I hate it. I absolutely hate it.
I know. I think so too. It's bugging the shit out of me.
It might pick up on StreamYard. I was kind of hoping it didn't glitch out, but once during the well, twice during the intro monologue. That went pretty well.
Yeah, I saw it glitch out twice. I just plowed ahead like I said I was going to do.
Yeah, I'm hoping that StreamYard picks it up and you'll be able to re-upload it as you see fit.
Yeah.
You seem to be fine now, but I'm sure as soon as you start, it'll cheese up again. You want to go through with it?
Yeah, I'll just go through
Okay.
with it until the
I'll
next
do the
time I
whole
glitch
thing.
out. So, should I go through the whole thing?
Well, now start where you're in the backlit. Go.
Okay, yeah. And backlit Malcolm Young stands before me, and really incredibly cool way to meet your hero, I thought. And the two of them stood out there with us for about 20 minutes. They were really incredibly interested in who we were, where we were from, how long it took us to get there. We told them about the news group. They seemed really amazed that existed, because they were pretty internet ignorant at that point, as many people still were. And they thanked us very much for the shirts. I took my shirt off my back and handed it to Angus, and he drew the Angus devil on it. And Malcolm signed it too. And then they both handed a couple of pics to us, and I just shoved them in my pocket. I didn't notice until afterward, until I think it was after we got home, that I pulled the pics out of my pocket, and only then do I realize that Angus gave me the pic he actually used in the gig that night, which still sits in a place of honor in my wife's jewelry box today. And yeah, it was. And in the end, we wound up not even having to go back over the fence. They had the security guy walk us out like civilized men. And meanwhile, Lady Curmudgeon's just standing on the other side of the fence taking this all in. She thought it was pretty cool too. I
Well,
almost forgot to introduce her. I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'd like you to meet my wife, Autumn." She's all, "Hi."
so
And
once you've climbed over a fence into a restricted area and you haven't started any problems, I think the responsible thing to do is allow you to leave like a person.
yeah, and like I said, the only reason my first instinct was to hop back over the fence was because I didn't want to take any more of his time, and I didn't even know Malcolm was coming out at that point. I thought it was just Angus. And
Yeah.
and I know he's when he's not on stage, he's a very shy man, almost to the point of social awkwardness. So I'm not going to stand there and beg for autographs and act like an idiot and make him uncomfortable. So, and
Oh,
those are the tiniest men you ever met in your life, just impossibly tiny. I mean, you hear about how tiny they are, but when you see them standing before you, it's like freaking. What are the names of the two hobbits? It's like that. It's like it's
Very
like it's
vivid.
like meeting a couple of hobbits. Angus Young has the tiniest feet I have ever seen on a grown man in my entire life.
You've
Not
clearly
shitting.
never seen Todd.
But yeah, I was really stoked to have been given the pick that he actually in
So
the
yeah,
gig. Man, he sure did chew.
I kind of want to take a shot at the music industry here for a second because I agree with you. I went to the last tour that Tom Petty did, and I happened to go to the opening night on the opening uh the tour opening, right? And so we get there and it's like this huge event. It's an enormous thing that's happening. Nothing really special happened. It was a concert, a very good one. They introduced a new CD. This is 15 years ago, maybe longer. And I don't know. I had a really good time. It was a nice evening. The really weird part about that night was when we left, there was like an entire row of cars outside in the parking lot where every single driver had locked their keys in their car. And it was really strange to me because we parked right next to them. And when when we come out and all the cars are lined up over there and there's like five cars and five people all standing there talking about breaking their windows to get in, and I looked at my wife and I'm like, did we lock our keys in the car? It seems strange that everybody over there did. And She's like, no, I got them right here. And we get in our car and sit there and wait for them to figure out how to get into their car. And one by one of my buddies who was one of the people who locked his keys in the car walked out of the venue. I have no idea where this guy went, but he was gone for like 10 minutes and he comes back with a brick. And he said, I found my keys. Smash. And I will never forget the casual way with which this gentleman basically robbed himself of a couple of $100 to replace a window.
Either that or he knows a guy who owns a repair shop or has a family member or something like that.
Yep. Okay, this week, what happened this week? We got some supposed Epstein leaks that took place. Do we believe any of it?
I haven't paid a whole hell of a lot of attention to it, frankly. Why don't you fill me in?
Okay, so I haven't been able to hunt down actual emails, although I did look around and try to find them. But I'm hearing all kinds of wildfire in the world. Supposedly, there is allegedly evidence of Trump fellatio on Clinton. Supposedly,
which Clinton?
Bill fellatio. Well, I guess you got a point there.
See what I did there?
I do. Which, if you ask me, that would be a revolutionary concept, because this means that there was an LGBT president in the mid-90s.
My general view on the matter of the Epstein files is that even once everything that exists is well and truly released, the people who don't find in its contents what they want it to contain will simply attribute it to a conspiracy theory, and
that'll be on both sides.
And insist that they're sort of a feedback loop basically forever.
Right. I look at the JFK files. It is a totally different circumstance. I'm not trying to draw a one-to-one comparison on this, but there are certain throughput concepts that go with it, such as the conspiracy aspect of all of it, how much the deep state would be involved in that kind of stuff, and that thing. I don't think it'll matter. Release them, don't release them. If you release them, like you said, you'll have some people who dig through all of it, say this can't be all of it. Where's the evidence on Trump? Where's the evidence on Biden? Where's the evidence on so and so that should be here? It's got to be.
Where is the evidence on the person that I think should be destroyed? Is what it will come down to.
And that being said, if you don't release them, or if you release them partially, that partial release will have exactly the same effect, because they will all say that the information they desire to be in it is actually in the withheld documents, and don't even believe they will ever release all the documents, at least not for 40 years.
Oh, I know. The FBI never does that. We saw that just this week.
Yeah, I think we'll get back to him in a moment. See, apparently the West Coast is having the problems we were having a couple of days ago. But until further notice. Oh, no. Oh, dearie, no. Where are we at over here? I left it playing. I got to find what I was going to play. So there's an interesting tidbit that has happened. I believe it's in Texas, but I'm not 100% on that. It might be Louisiana. Apparently, there has been a case finally brought about flock cameras. And if you don't know what flock cameras are, these are the cameras that the city, the state, the county uses when you're traveling through an area you're unfamiliar with and you speed a little bit. And then like 3 months later, you get a ticket in the mail saying, hey, we caught you speeding. Apparently, those records are public records, regardless of how they were acquired and in what way they're stored or how they're assembled or what database they're in. They are generated as a matter of public activity by a government, municipal, county, state, federal, or otherwise, and therefore should be accessible to the public by way of FOIA acts. However, every attempt to access this information by private citizens has always been blocked by the concept that, oh, we don't own those cameras. We lease them. We contract someone to maintain them and to collect that data. And they don't collect the data. That's a different company that the government contracts with that collects the data. And they don't collate the data. That's yet another company that does all the collations. And then that information is sent back to the local government to send you a ticket. But that part of it's completely automated. But if it's a public record, that means that any one of us, because I mean, there's an argument for it to be a Fourth Amendment violation for them to film the interior of your car without your permission and without a warrant. And while you're in public, that's fine. Sitting in a parking lot, sitting at a park, sitting outside of a bar or something like that. But when it comes to you're driving down the road, on average, the average person, an average cop or an average individual in another car is not going to have the capability of taking a rapid response, rapid focus photograph of the interior of your car, your face, and your license plate in such a way that it would be useful. And yet that is specifically the point in these cameras, is to do that. Now, once people started trying to FOIA this information, a couple of things took place. First, the government said you couldn't have it. When it was determined that they have to give it to you by means of the FOIA Act, it was determined that, oh, well, we don't have to give it to you because it doesn't violate any of your rights. And then, well, court cases determined that it does infringe on the Fourth Amendment to an extent, unless you allow public access to the footage. And then they say, oh, well, in that case, we're just going to shut them down. They just discontinued using flock cameras because you had access to it yourself, because you or me or anybody else could go up to whatever municipality is using them and be like, hey, I want all of the information from such and such date to such and such date, all of the photographs. And yes, it pretty much just proves the government is corrupt, because it leaves me asking the question, what are they using this to form a database of, except for your traveling, like your location at certain times, places, and points? That's the only thing I can think of. And
but it is kind of fun how it always pops right back up when there's something that needs to be distracted from. And so, which leads me to believe that a definitive resolution to the thing might not be wanted as badly as people say they want it. Because it often is useful to have a thing that you can plug right in just when you just shut down the government for 43 days and got completely owned and got absolutely nothing out of the deal, and you look like fools. Well, let's talk about freaking Epstein again, shall we?
Right. And it rears its ugly head. Oh no, we've got new emails. We got new this, we got new that. And 9 times out of 10, it turns out to be an old email that's been almost forgotten, that they redacted something on it and say it's new. And then they send it and have them send it back so they've got the right text timestamp on it.
And I was just starting to say before the last time I glitched out that we saw another example of the phenomenon you were talking about before, just this week, when they released a new tranche of Amelia Earhart documents, of all things. And did we glean any new information that people who are well read on the subject didn't already know? Of course we didn't. Were there any bombshell revelations? Of course they weren't. Was there any coherent reason why any of this stuff should have been classified and withheld for over 80 years? Of course not. That's just the way the deep state does things. And it often makes no sense whatsoever.
None, zero. It kind of reminds me of the FBI losing the documents to some past presidential things and then randomly discovering them while supposedly looking for some of the more recent files. just some room they happen to have in some safe house somewhere. They find a whole pile of documents out of the mid 30s just sitting around, never been documented, never been gone through. Nobody's ever seen them before. Guess what? They're all available for FOIA requests at this point, but you have to know they exist to ask.
I still think somebody's going to stumble upon Edgar's secret lingerie closet one day. And won't
Right?
that be fun?
I don't know you'll ever find out about it, but it would be hilarious if we did.
Oh, can you imagine the shit that's lurking around in the nooks and crannies of that building? My God.
I bet you the wall looks like a Jackson Pollock painting.
The wall probably does indeed look like a Jackson Pollock painting, a painting that he painted 4 or 5 times.
So I come across something especially horrifying to me, and I'm going to pitch it at you, and you tell me what you think about it. So
Got it.
we've covered brain organoids before. You've heard of this, right? Yes? No? Okay. So just for those in the cheap seats in the back, brain organoids are parts of either human or chimp or monkey brains that have been placed on a chip and artificially grown to create something like a little mini computer. The plan, a plan for these things has been put into motion. As far as I know, they're going through with this. They're going to try to make this happen in order to utilize brain organoids to power NPCs in video games of the future, so that your NPCs can
Nice.
have more what do they call it? Non-linear thinking, right? And I think this is
If
a
only
night,
we could make the real life NPCs actually be smarter than a chimpanzee.
right? Oh my lord, can you imagine it? They vote anyway. So, and we don't even give the chimps the right to vote. I have yet to see a Sasquatch vote in an election, and I'm a little upset by that.
I know. When are we getting Sasquatch enfranchisement? I
That's
mean,
right.
and that applies obviously to all large furry cryptids. I would submit.
Yep. Um, but I think this is one of the, the whole transhumanist agenda thing. They're trying to kind of smudge the line between human and machine in such a way as for you to believe that the thing that you upload to a computer in 10, 15, 20 years is your soul, and that
Yeah,
soul is
that
immortal.
stuff is all getting kind of creepy, if you ask me.
It's getting creepy because of how close we are getting to the realization of a combination of different technologies, right?
Yes,
One of the
and
issues,
we've talked about before the overwhelming likelihood that especially for people for whom there is just thousands and thousands of hours of tape of them sitting and talking into a microphone for days and months and years on it, like Rush Limbaugh or somebody like that. It will not be difficult at all within the next half a decade or so to come up with a really darn convincing AI simulacrum of people like that. And boy, you want to talk about ethical boundaries that are going to have to be considered at that point. I mean, you might be living in a world 10 years from now where Rush Limbaugh has his radio show again, despite the fact he's dead.
I hear that, but I'm less concerned with AI copies of people, which is an issue. I mean, this goes into the Epstein files too. You're not going to be able to believe anything you find anywhere from now on, even if they
Correct.
released full color video.
Everything will have to be viewed with suspicion, and it's getting really bad on YouTube,
Right.
as I'm sure you've noticed. I mean, you can still tell, but the uncanny valley, the aperture of that valley has been closed to the point where you can tell it's an AI voiceover, but you can't necessarily tell why it's an AI voiceover. And in my opinion, the main reason for that is because the AI voiceovers, there's no breath noises.
I do my best to edit out breath noises when I'm doing line readings, but it's never perfect.
Correct. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying, because even when you try to snip those out, there is still that little vestige of it that remains, because when it's an actual human being talking, the amount of air you have in your lungs is just something that needs to be dealt with. And
Okay.
when you say something when you're on the last bit of air in your lungs, it sounds differently than it would when you've got a full tank in there. And I think that's the next thing that the AI voiceovers have to perfect in order to really eliminate the uncanny valley once and for all. And I'm sure they will achieve it. I mean, look at how much more convincing they are today than they were just 2 or 3 years ago. It's like night and day
1 year
practically.
ago.
Well,
One
yeah,
year.
1 year ago even. Yeah.
Me and you were doing Harmony Unleashed a little over a year ago, and the strides that have been taken in uh, accurately redepicting something that you have subject matter of is amazing. It's astounding. In fact, I have some examples. Are you? I've talked to you before about Salmonella University and how he used a very simplistic method to illustrate his videos, and he did it for years on YouTube. He's like a 9 7 9 year old channel. He's been doing it for years. Recently, a handful of people, or possibly the same person, has been releasing virtually identical MS Paint style videos with the same type of voiceover,
with modern rockets. These massive machines blast off into space, and then instead of
which are basically the same content Salmonella was making 5 years ago.
Right.
But here's the thing. Here's the part, and I can't show it like this. I'm going to have to do it the sloppy way. Here's the part that'll break your brain a little bit. Chill Dude Explains, the Chill Historian, Chill Dude Shadow Mode, Chill Dude Shadow Mode, and another Chill Dude Explains. These are all essentially based off of the same, the Chill Historian, off of the same type, style, method, and manner. But they're all of these channels are uploading, a video a day or 2 videos a day. And
Oh, I
if
know. Just I have a shocking amount of the stuff popping up in my feed constantly, and it just grows exponentially.
right, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. It just seems to randomly generate itself into whatever you were talking about last. You like go online and you're saying something in presence of your phone, and then later you get a Chill Dude Explains video that pops up. Here's my question. Why is it a Chill Dude Explains video instead of a Salmonella video? Right? Which one of these people have made more money for YouTube? Well, in the past, it was Salmonella, but in the future, it will be a Chill Dude Explains. What's up, Brian Graham? Welcome in, bud.
I missed your question. I glitched out again.
It's why is YouTube suggesting the Chill Dude Explains and his clone copies of himself rather than Salmonella University on the same subject matter, same topic, same style of graphics, and same delivery?
And I have a related question, which is, when you upload a video, they make you check a box saying whether or not the video has AI generated content in it. But when those things pop up in your feed, there is not any disclaimer on the video that says that's what it is. So why do we do that if we're not even going to get a helpful, at least up in the corner of the thumbnail? Why can't we have it say AI? What is the point of making people check those boxes if it doesn't result in anything?
Right. And what it ultimately it's to train the YouTube AI to recognize AI so that YouTube can duplicate AI content that's already available, right? And then they can
Yeah.
utilize that AI to more accurately reproduce you and me and anyone else, That's
Yeah.
essentially all I can come up with.
And it's gotten completely out of control with history videos in particular lately. Just there's no way to tell when you click on what you think is a cool history video until the voiceover starts. And my God, the some of the facts that they get wrong are just
Yeah, no.
completely absurd. And even when it's a really incredibly convincing sounding voiceover, there will always be a telltale mispronunciation in there somewhere, or a thing being said wrong that makes you go, okay, you're busted, I'm out of here.
Right. And what happens, a year from now, 2 years from now, when new YouTubers have started doing things like this, and it won't be on YouTube because AI is taking over. Uh, but in whatever new genre they end up opening into, what happens when they take the facts that AI is laying down now and will be the most available citation available on YouTube or Google, and that's the only citations they have. We are
Yeah, you're
entering a
exactly
new
right. And it has the potential to be the biggest misinformation factory in world history.
we are entering a new dark age of truth because truth cannot be shown. We can no longer prove anything. Proof is no longer acceptable because you can just make an AI video of whatever you want to prove.
And all information sources have to be viewed with suspicion permanently.
Right, which brings us all the way 100 degrees to 1984. And Mr. Yuri Bezmenov, who came over here and made this statement that when the subversion is complete, you can tell a person the truth with evidence and they will disbelieve their lying eyes rather
Yep.
than believe the actual proof before you. At this point, they can simply disbelieve your proof because it's AI generated and I don't believe you.
Yeah. But man, Yuri Bezmenov was a he was one of those people who lived many decades ahead of his time and could see the way the winds were blowing and didn't get many things wrong.
There's not a lot that he got off base. He had a slight misunderstanding in his explanation of how a cell phone would eventually work because he didn't understand, he didn't grasp the concept of a cell phone as we understand a smartphone, I guess I should say. He was talking more along the lines of, cyberpunk world where there's ads playing on the insides of your eyelids and stuff like that. And that would be
Yeah.
your Ministry of Truth thing. Like it would be on every shop window and every TV on every corner, playing everywhere all the time.
But a lot of people got that wrong until it actually happened. Like one thing that always makes me chuckle is when you watch Star Trek from the 90s and everybody's got, the super advanced little thing that looks like what we would call it a notepad now. And but the notepads can't talk to each other. They have to pass the little tabs back back and forth because they apparently they've got everything we could possibly imagine except wireless internet.
Right. It just never crossed their mind, which is odd because Tesla had kind of figured that trash out early.
Yeah, he
He,
sure had.
he was like, no, if you just set everything up on a resonance, then you can send signals through the signals. And nobody got what he meant. And now we're doing part of it with cell phones and wireless communication.
Yeah, and when he figures that out, it's only, I want to say it's less than 2 decades after Mr. Marconi first figured out how to send signals through the air, which that's pretty far ahead of your time right there.
Yeah. And not just that it was possible to send signals through the air, but that those signals could be quantified in such a way as to send multiple packs of data through the same signal without interference or overlap.
Right.
That's genius.
And then, well, what the hell? Now that we know we can send signals, it's not like we can send voices yet. Well, what the hell do we do with it? How do we figure out a way to send intelligible information? And then Mr. Morse comes up with the answer. He says, "I've got a system of dots and dashes," and that completely changes everything about the world overnight. Just ask the Titanic survivors, because there wouldn't be any otherwise without Marconi and Morse. Just
I
what
have
they had
a
achieved in the last 15 years before that.
I have a curiosity as to how long between the development of the Morse code and when the Morse code was used for telegraphic sex. I firmly believe Mr. Morse himself was probably involved in some of this. I mean, Rule
And
34 states.
you know what's funny is that how much use was made by the early Marconi operators, like the guys who worked on ocean-going ships in particular that we would identify now as shorthand text speech. Like, they would say like OM, which would mean old man, or GTH, meaning shut up, go to hell. You're jamming my signal. It wasn't necessarily an insult. It was just leave me alone right now. I'm working some other station, and you could transmit 5, 6, 7 letters, and it would be understood by the party you were talking to as a fully constructed sentence. And I think a lot of people don't understand that's the way things actually used to work with Morse code signaling. Because if you say hello there, what is your location, you're not actually tapping out every single one of those letters. You're shorthanding that thing as best you possibly can, because you don't want to waste your time and the other guy's time. That would be ridiculous. So you use what we would call text speak.
Yes. And I mean, that's inevitable. That is an inevitable conclusion of communication, is to abbreviate that communication down to a minimal number of symbols for the efficiency of the communication.
Yes, because I want to convey the information I need to convey as efficiently and quickly as possible, and make sure it is understood by the person to whom I'm conveying it.
Facts. Anything else in the world today that we need to cover before we go to
you want to talk about there was a couple of interesting developments with 3i Atlas this week.
Actually, I missed that. I've been stupid busy. I was lucky to catch the weird email things.
And every time there's anything anomalous with this object, people want to freak out and say it's aliens. So they've received a radio transmission. No, it's not like people trying to talk to us. It's just it's a signature of a chemical process that is normally associated with what happens with comets when they approach the sun. But the thing that really interested me is the fact that, as we know, the thing has jets shooting off of it, multiple independent, emissions of something or other. However, the object is supposed to be rotating about 16 times per hour, and yet when we image the object, there is no smearing of those jets, as there should be if the jets are coming from a stationary spot upon the object. So it almost has the appearance that the source of the jets is remaining in one location and the rest of the object is rotating around them, which is a pretty damned interesting thing, for which I don't think anybody has a very satisfactory explanation yet. And how awesome that we are able to study things like that now, I think.
True. One thing I want to kind of keep out in front of all of this before we start screaming aliens. This is an extrasolar object. This thing was born in a primal furnace a bajillion light years away and ended up here by mere happenstance.
Yep.
And there is no predicting the behavior it may have when crossing the backside of our sun. And
exactly.
because of the complete lack of information we have on objects like this, anything that it does could be construed as perfectly natural until proven otherwise.
And there's absolutely no reason why we should assume that an interstellar object would behave in the same way as the objects from our own system that we have been able to study, because obviously it wouldn't. Obviously, there are processes, perfectly natural processes throughout the universe that we haven't yet had a chance to observe, and that's exactly what's happening here.
And and I'm going to say there is a non-zero probability of alien intervention involved in this thing, and that would be simply as little as some alien culture out there in some other solar system a bajillion years ago put a probe on it because it happened to be going towards our sun or a sun, right?
Yeah.
Non-zero probability, meaning that so infinitesimally small a chance as to be unmentionable.
And we've talked before about the likelihood which I happen to view as overwhelmingly high, that if and when we actually do detect an object that is definitively of intelligent interstellar origin, it is going to be some really ancient defunct object that's been, aimlessly just traversing the cosmos for millions or billions of years. It's not going to be a thing that's being actively controlled, or you know what I mean?
It will almost certainly be something like our Voyager probe in whatever
Yeah,
format they put together, and
it
it
will
will
be some
almost
some
certainly
some
be
form of space garbage.
a dysfunctional, defunct, completely useless bit of ancient tech that the civilization that designed it probably went extinct long before we found it.
Yes, which wouldn't make it any less fascinating, but we kind of tend to take an excessively anthropocentric view of such things, where we sort of assume that another civilization uh, that we might find evidence of would have to be existing at the same time as us, and it's overwhelmingly unlikely that that would be the case.
Agreed. But in that small chance, and given all these things, there is one probability breaker that needs to be mentioned, I think. A consciously sent probe, right, would break all of your chances and probabilities. If in fact there is a civilization out there with the capability of reaching us and with the knowledge that we exist, or the suspicion that we exist, right? Because at
Right.
this point, the James Webb Telescope is allowing us to find atmosphere on extrasolar planets.
There's a lot of cool stuff coming out of James Webb.
There's a lot of really cool stuff, and
Yeah,
it's only
I'm
scratching the surface of the iceberg on that one.
Oh, I know. It was a long wait, but it was worth the wait for that thing to go up, man, because there is great stuff coming out.
Absolutely. And the one thing that would break all of the probabilities would be that there is a conscious intellect running the opposite side of this exchange, because the last three extrasolar objects that we've measured, and the other two, one of the other two that we might have glimpsed in the early days, we found some vapor trails and stuff that were indicative of having come from outside the solar system. um, Everything, with the exception of one vapor trail, has come from the same quadrant. And so,
Oh
if
yeah,
an intelligent
I
race,
forget which constellation it's coming from. I want to say it's
it's over
Taurus.
there.
Yeah,
It doesn't really
it's over
matter,
there.
but it's that way. It's not quite off the parallel disk, you know. But
But yeah, same general neighborhood. In other words,
right, they're coming out of the same general quadrant. That being said, if an intelligent race were to attempt to try to contact Earth, that would be a pretty good place to start, would be to go somewhere there's a rich amount of material leaving in multiple directions, and just hitch a ride with it. Just stick you a probe on it and measure stuff as it goes through. I don't know how you would communicate back and forth. We're talking about superluminal distances, so
yeah,
that's an interesting thing.
and
But the
that's
chances are immaterial.
and it's a salient point that you raise, because the probability of, I mean, if we're going to assume that we're dealing with a probe, the biggest argument against that is the sheer size of the object, because you shouldn't need an object of that size for a probe. That seems screamingly inefficient. So it would make far more sense, like you said, to take a tiny little probe type device that can convey the data you want it to convey, and just stick it on a natural object that's going the way you in the direction of whatever it is, the thing you want to investigate. For example, the Breakthrough Starshot project, which was just recently canceled, which I thought was kind of sad. But with the technology we have right now, we could we could send a probe weighing 2 or 3 grams, and get a little camera and a little thruster and basic electronics onto it, propel it with a laser sail, and get it into the Proxima Centauri system or Alpha Centauri system in about 30 years. and we're still a pretty primitive race as far as interstellar travel goes. The point being, if you're just sending a remote probe to another system, it would almost certainly not be a thing that would be big enough for us to be able to detect with our current technological capacity. I mean, there could be an entire swarm of probes in our system right now, and they're just too tiny for us to see.
And that makes me want to bring up the Black Knight, but there's no point in it. Yeah, y'all put on y'all's tinfoil hats and go read up on the Black Knight. But that being said, yes, there could be an entire flotilla of starships on the dark side of the moon, and we'd have no idea. There's no way for us to know. That being said, the non-zero possibility here is the part that's got everyone excited, and that's a little bit disturbing that many people in America, educated individuals, are so uptight about the idea of aliens.
Oh,
If
I know.
there's aliens, there's no intelligent life on this planet, so why would they bother coming here?
Can you imagine what the Heaven's Gate wackos would have done with this? My God, they 25 of them killed themselves over the stupid Hale-Bopp comet that just wound up crashing into Jupiter. I hope it was worth the ride, guys.
Somehow I don't think it was. Those shoes, they were pretty.
I know, yeah, and now now we're able to study actual interstellar objects, which and the unfortunate thing about people wanting so badly to jump to the conclusion of an intelligently controlled, alien object is that the fact that it's a natural object doesn't make it any less interesting or any less fascinating, and we should be just over the moon elated that we actually have the opportunity to detect and study objects like this now, because who the hell knows how many objects similar to this or even more interesting have passed through our neighborhood previously, even since the dawn of our civilization, without us ever knowing it. And I think we're probably going to wind up discerning that it's more of a common common occurrence than we might have ever imagined.
I'm fixing to go deep because I just had a thought. You said something.
The hat's on, folks.
You said something about the only way that could happen for the amount of debris coming off of this thing that are appearing as jets and for it to be spinning the way it's spinning is if the thrusters were removed from the body of the comet itself, right?
Yeah,
what
as if you had a something stationary with jets emitting out of it, and then like a rack and pinion, almost something rotating around that central stable thing.
You know what a JATO is?
Yeah.
JATO rocket? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, what if you've got something similar to a JATO rocket that when it reaches a point of apogee in a solar environment, lifts off from the surface of it and maintains stationary position while the comet does whatever weird rodeo it's going to do while it's there? This actually plays into the concept of the piggybacking method of exploration.
Yeah, and on a similar note, we talked about this before when we were talking about Oumuamua, which I thought was a really fascinating potential theory that Avi Loeb had about that object when he said that it might be that the object is stationary and our solar system is passing by it, because based on relative velocity, the object is actually closer to the local standard of rest than our solar system is. So it might be moving through us from our perspective, but we could just as well be passing by it, and it's the stationary thing and we are not.
Right. No, and I get that. Although it's more likely some combination of the two
Right.
divergent trajectories, and we happen to be there, and our sun happens to be close enough to gravitationally capture it for a moment.
And local standard of rest is kind of a misleading term anyway, because there's not really any such thing as rest.
There's no reference. You
can't.
can't.
Yeah.
The only
Everything is in motion. And,
The only
and
reference
usually
you
at
see-
velocities we can't even imagine. And that was another bit of news that came out this week, that the rate at which our solar system is orbiting the galactic core is potentially 3 times faster than we thought it was.
Kind of has to be. You got to
Yeah.
remember the previous numbers that we came up with didn't take into account any of the weird expansional energy that was built into the system. None of the equilibrium of things falling in versus things being pushed out, and they have yet to determine how much, a balance of energy for the expansion of these galaxies in conjunction with the black hole center of most galaxies. And when you
And
combine that
we still really don't have the faintest idea what the forces that we call dark matter and dark energy actually are. They really are just placeholders that we have plugged into the equations in order to make the equations pencil out. What it actually is, I mean, could still be anybody's guess. And when we actually find the conclusion, it will probably be, as these things often are, something that never occurred to anybody.
right, and dark energy literally is a placeholder for this much effect is taking place. This much kinetic effect is taking place visually in the visuals and radio spectrum that we can't explain. That's dark energy. And then dark matter is there is apparently this much more gravitational effect on local objects and distant objects. And we have no idea where this matter is or how it could be an extent without us knowing where it is. And one explanation is there's a lot more cosmic dust than we know about. If it's not
Right.
generating stars and doesn't have a black hole nearby, there's no way to really pick up on it. And it would also explain some of the brightening and dimming stars that we find in the night sky that we haven't really been able to explain, would be an extra amount of cosmic dust.
Right. And I think the current the current conventional wisdom, I believe, says that the average cubic meter of what we call open space contains about one hydrogen molecule, and that's about it. And that's probably complete horseshit. There's probably lots and lots of other stuff there. We just don't know how to detect it yet.
Or our attempts to detect it are basically absorbed by it.
Yeah, that's
Rogue
another
planets.
fairly distinct possibility.
One of my favorite scientific studies is into the concept of rogue planets. These can be anything from Mercury-sized supermoons all the way through to Jupiter-sized gas giants that, for some reason or another, get thrown out of their solar orbit.
Yep.
They then spend some immeasurable amount of time crossing the Great Black. One of these things that happens to come off on a trajectory that sends it into one of these dust clouds would be completely undetectable. Let's say hypothetically it's a Jupiter-sized planet, right? It's a gas giant. This thing would travel through the black, collecting material at the same time it's sloughing off heat at an amazing velocity. Like it would literally crinkle down like a raisin until it came into the heliotrope of a new star and started becoming active again. We can't detect cold. We can read heat. As long as it's emitting something, we can usually find it if there's nothing stopping it. But if it's a cold object, it's a black object, and that absorbs anything you throw towards it. And so we can't detect it.
Yeah, and there's a non-zero possibility that in the distant past, some sort of rogue planet or rogue object coming into our system is what accounts for the unexplained motion of Neptune that we still haven't come up with an adequate explanation for, and the fact that Uranus rotates flat on its side instead of straight up like all the other planets. And there's, like I said, a non-zero possibility that some sort of rogue object entered our neighborhood, disrupted those two planets, and then kept flying in further, got torn to shit by Jupiter, and wound up creating the asteroid belt.
Some aspect of it. I'm pretty sure part of the mantle of Mars is the asteroid belt. Yeah, because I mean Mars. mathematically speaking, Mars should be approximately the size of Earth. It should be a third Earth twin, Venus, Earth, and Mars, right?
Right, because
But it's
Venus and
not.
Earth are pretty damn close.
And ostensibly, the reason it's not is because with Phobos and Deimos, there was a larger protoplanet that was traveling with them, and that larger protoplanet struck Mars and knocked the exterior mantle off, and basically re recoated the surface in fresh magma. That's why Mars has virtually no elevation change except for where there's been obvious water or some sort of fluid erosion. And
Right,
hence
and it could have also obliterated whatever atmosphere Mars might have had at that point, which
right,
obviously made all of the surface water go away because we know that thing used to have a hell of a lot of surface water.
it had to have. And it would explain the reduced gravity, the reduced spin. Mars doesn't spin nearly as fast as Earth. It's not as bad as Venus. Venus is absurd. It's like like what, a year and a half or a day,
Yeah,
something.
it is absurdly slow.
And yet and people are still trying to figure out how to go to Mars. But let me tell you something about going to Mars. And this was figured out by sci-fi writers back in the 50s and 60s. So I don't understand why we're still going down this path. If you send people to Mars and they're on the surface more than a couple of years, bringing them back to Earth would be almost suicidal. uh,
Yeah, because you only get that conjunction about every 2.5 years, I believe it is, where
right,
where it's
which
even
means
where it's even feasible to make the trip.
they will be stuck on Mars for no less than a year and a half before they can come back towards Earth, much less actually get to Earth. So we're talking 4 years round trip, at least, right? So
Yeah,
probably
which
more like six, to be
Which
honest.
is which is why it's not really practicable to do a kind of, just a footprints and flags type of deal like we did with the moon. And I think a
Right.
lot of people fail to understand that.
Right. Now, a lot of people also don't understand that if you put a man on Mars for 2 years, that man might not be able to survive attaining escape velocity from Mars, but probably will, right? But when he gets to Earth, he will experience more gravity than the escape velocity of Mars.
Yes.
And it's basically going to be turning in 60 years of life for a 4 year trip. This
Yep. So
person, when they come
you
home,
better send a teenager.
will essentially have the bones of an octogenarian, will have the muscle atrophy of someone who's in their 90s, and would have a lifespan measured probably in months, if in years, a couple of years rather than decades.
Right.
I'm not
And
sure anybody's going to sign up for that. I don't think that's worth it. So the other option is to plant a colony on Mars and then not leave.
which I think you have to do. And I think that realization is starting to be more accepted than it traditionally has been. Because
I
yeah, you
disagree.
have to, if you're going to send people, you have to assume it is a one-way trip, and you have to give them a fighting chance at actual survival and self-sufficiency, which is a pretty big leap from what we're capable of doing right now.
I think our better choice would be to target one of the moon's Lagrange points, probably L2 or L3, uh, which would be much more useful to us, and actually make an attempt at building a bicycle wheel style station in the number three Lagrange point between here and the moon. We can then utilize that as a stepping off point both to the moon, which it has the same problems Mars has when it comes to a permanent colony there. You'd have to rotate people out pretty aggressively, or you would have to set them up a full colony and let them live there. And if you've
Yeah,
ever
you're
read
right, and
Venus Harsh
because
Mistress,
launching a manned craft directly out of Earth's gravity well to Mars is just spectacularly wasteful in terms of propellant. It makes orders of
zero
magnitude
sense.
more sense to do it from, like you said, to launch it from an object that's already in orbit. because
The way
otherwise
you
you've
accomplish
got to
this,
build a real behemoth of a vehicle.
the way you accomplish this, at least as far as Arthur C. Clarke saw, was to establish a Earth-based satellite, a space station, legitimately a space station with the capability of refueling ships and allowing them to launch from there to the next stage in the Lagrange 2 point, and then place another space station that services nothing but the moon in Lagrange 3. And then the travel between Lagrange 1 and Lagrange 2 and 3 isn't too expensive because it's all zero G and vectored thrust and mathematics. That's no big deal.
And and you don't the attractive thing about the Lagrange points is you don't need propellant for station keeping because they just keep you where you want to be.
Not nearly as much. Now there's a little cleanup that would have to take place before we could do this. There are some solid objects floating in these spaces for the same reason we would put the space stations there. My point being, one space station probably won't suit a moon colony. If we're actually going to put people on the moon to live there, they will have to have a dedicated station with which to operate. Those individuals will be perfectly suited to operate anywhere from inside the asteroid belt, right? From there back to Earth. Most of the inner solar system would be under their control at that point. So anyone who moves to the moon would be moving into a status position of power directly over the Earth. They will have the capability of dropping rocks from orbit.
And if you're going to inhabit the surface of the moon, you need to put it underground. And so thus you need to be able to do the excavation necessary to build it underground, because trying to build it on the surface instead of underneath the regolith that's a much bigger
That's a non-starter.
engineering problem than just digging a tunnel and putting it down there.
Right. I don't think it was Arthur C. Clarke. I don't remember which one of them it was that said it. It was one of the JPL folks, but they did a whole bunch of mathematics on fuel and what it would take to like move Earth movers up to the moon, things that could function in the lack of environmentals and whatnot. And it was determined that it would be cheaper to hand build a tunnel borer, disassemble it, and send it to the moon in pieces using like bouncy drop pads, and then send a team to go assemble it and basically build a computer on it to control it, and then come back to Earth and let it dig a huge tunnel for the next 50 years and only send people up to maintain it and seal out the tunnel.
I've read that same thing you're talking about. I just don't remember where I read it.
I picked it up in the back, I believe, of one of Arthur C. Clarke's novels, if I'm not mistaken.
Was it? Yeah, it could have been. You might be right.
I think. I mean, I'm pretty good at this type of stuff, but it might have been a Heinlein novel, but I think it was in the back of an Arthur C. Clarke.
And that definitely is the road to go down, because just in terms of radiation shielding, if you try to build above ground on the moon instead of below ground and using the protection that the regolith provides, that just explodes the amount of raw construction material you have to send up there. And it doesn't pencil out in terms of engineering resources at all. You got to dig a big hole. That's the only way to go.
So you're right. You're absolutely right. That is a enormous amount of deficit specifically. And I'm not talking about the steel. I'm not talking about all of the space age materials, simply in energy. The amount of energy and fuel it would take to do this type of thing from Earth to the moon is so prohibitively absurd that I don't believe it is even possible. The Lagrange point.
Well, yeah, because that old annoying rocket equation always comes into play. That you need more propellant to push the propellant that you need to push to get the thing up, and that whole rabbit hole that you have to go down.
So what Arthur C. Clarke, or wherever I read the paper, what they proposed was you start by building essentially a platform with attachment points that you can take some space shuttle tanks up to, and you build the space shuttle to not use all of the fuel that it has on the way there, so that it can offload material while taking up components for the space station itself, thereby filling the tanks that would operate your JATO rockets to keep it in orbit in the right spot and all that cool stuff.
Yeah.
Rinse, repeat.
Yeah,
I mean,
and you need to avoid as much as possible having to lift any completed articles out of Earth's gravity well. And at least until you've got a reliable space elevator is the only way
okay,
around that.
let's go to that. Let's try that. We got 5 minutes. I'll spend 4 on the space elevator. The reason we don't have a space elevator is because, as far as we can tell, due to the diameter of Earth and the speed at which it's traveling through the universe, the materials that we've managed to create do not have the tensile strength to hold the counterweight in place in a geocentric space. Because of the
Exactly right.
moon, because of the moon, that strap, that singular elevator material would be subjected to push and pull forces of the same level, a higher level than that of the tides. And that specifically prevents us from utilizing a space elevator in the usual sense. This might work on Mars, would almost certainly work on Venus. It spins very slowly. But here it's very problematic because of the nature of the moon and the Earth and the dual orbits that we have, because we don't actually orbit around the moon. Doesn't actually orbit around the Earth. The Earth and the moon orbit around a
common center of gravity
point. That common central center of gravity is the problem with the space elevator on Earth, and it's why the materials we need have to be so advanced. If we were to do the same thing on, say, Venus, that would be a walk in the park. We could do that with braided steel.
Yeah, because you have to bear in mind that an object in geostationary orbit that's quote unquote stationary with respect to a certain spot on Earth is still moving at 17,000 miles an hour.
Exactly. And also it's innately not stable because of the nature of the Earth Moon system. So you're talking about an excessive, I believe, an excessive amount of fuel being required to be taken on each trip in order to stabilize it. And if something ever went wrong with the computers, the electric, the rockets, the fuel delivery, the guy pushing the button, anything goes wrong in any of that, and that thing comes down. God, I can't remember the name of the book. There was a book where somebody described what it would look like for a space elevator to come down with its counterweight.
Oh, I know.
And it was, oh my God, you're talking about a strap of steel landing on the ground that weighs several tons per 100 foot or more. And it's coming down at like 37 times the speed of sound. But
it seems like you would almost have to have the tether point be in Antarctica.
Well, that's just it. It can't be in Antarctica. That is an unstable location.
And you can't really have it in the open ocean because of the tsunami that the thing coming down would create.
It wouldn't matter. The tether would be so long, it would wrap around the planet 15 times or so before you ran out. And you have to have a counterweight of sufficient weight to be able to deal with any small gravitational anomalies caused by the Earth itself. And that's not
definitely would cause a bit of bother if the thing failed. That's for damn sure.
And it would have to be on the equator. It has to be for the stabilization to actually
I guess you're right.
take effect. But all of that being said, I deem it to be impossible with materials that we can theorize to exist. Carbon fiber won't do it.
No. Yeah, carbon fiber.
So much.
Carbon fiber is a bit of an overrated material in some respects. It used to be kind of a catch-all thing that was proposed as a solution for everything, but some of its limitations have started to be more well understood in recent years.
Right.
It's going to take something in the next generation that we don't know how to build yet, but we'll build it eventually. Somebody will build it.
I don't know that we will build a space elevator on Earth. Like I said, the gravitational situation here is it becomes a 3-body problem. That's the issue.
Yeah,
when you add a large enough counterweight for it to function geocentrically over the Earth, it becomes a three-body problem, and we would, like I said, we would have to constantly readjust the situation on just about every 24-hour period in order to maintain a stability.
Yeah, and that's, those are just the problems inherent in tethering the thing and maintaining the position of the thing on the other end, irrespective of actually trying to get stuff up and down it, which is a whole separate series of problems.
Right. And God forbid anything were to happen on Earth that speeds up the Earth or slows down the Earth a hair. That's nightmarish, because
Oh yeah,
that's something,
yeah, too many variables.
right? You can only react to that. You can't plan for that. You can plan for it to happen, but you won't know what to do about it till after it's taken place. And if you can't instigate the change fast enough, it's basically reeling that sucker in like a spinner rod. It's time for you to do the thing.
I will do the thing then.
Do the thing.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks ever so much for joining us here on the Blast Radius tonight. We had what I thought was a very stimulating, very high-minded discussion, perhaps less vulgar than some of our other discussions, and there's nothing wrong with that, though everybody does enjoy a little bit of vulgarity from time to time. We hope you have a fantastic tomorrow and an edifying day after that, and a very exciting remainder of your week. For all you cricket fans out there, Ashes are starting on Friday. Very excited about that. So, yeah, maybe we'll talk a little bit of cricket next week. Isn't that exciting? We will see you next Sunday, same time, same place, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific. God bless. Take care. See you next time. Get off my lawn.